Wow. It's time. Sometimes you just have to sing. La 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 la. Oh my gosh. Good morning, besties. Happy Monday. Happy Transit Chat Monday. Holy shit. So much happened in the sky over the last 24 hours and is happening this week. But we will get to that. I have a couple of announcements while people are still pulling up. First, hello to everyone in the chat. Hey Sherry, nice to see you. Long time no chat. Hey Dr. Deb. Good morning. Yes, we will talk about this here in just a moment. Hi Tom, good morning. Why does my voice sound deeper? I haven't spoken a word today, so that's probably why. It's I slept in because I have not been sleeping very well lately for a number of reasons, but I was sleeping well last night finally, and then a bad dream about one of my dogs woke me up around 5:30, and then I didn't fall back asleep until probably 30, 45 minutes after that, just laying there. And then when I did fall asleep, I had more weird dreams. So I don't know. My nervous system is kind of a mess this morning. but that fits with a lot of what we're talking about today. So couple of announcements. One, I officially got a salary job. I did the thing that I swore to myself, at least, and maybe talked about publicly a lot over the years, that I would never do. And I got a 9 to 5. But this is great news because I need it. And this is also great news because it feels like a gift from Jupiter and Taurus, as well as Saturn in Aquarius for the end of my Saturn return. So surprisingly, I am looking forward to it. I'm optimistic. It feels intuitively like something I need to do, something that will work for me, something that will give back to me in big ways that I really need and that I've earned, for lack of a better way to put it. But I start on March 24th, so I still have a month, and I don't know when my first paycheck will be from the salary position. So I don't know, other than my part-time checks when I get paid again. So that being said, all of my readings from now until March 24th are 50% off, some even more than 50% off. And they will probably stay that way indefinitely. But part of the reason I'm doing a sale from now through March 24th is because I will be closing my books for an indeterminate amount of time once I start my new job. Because, like I said, it is a 9 to 5. I will be at work physically 40 hours a week. And so I don't know when or if I will have the energy to do one-on-one readings again. So if you haven't had a reading with me and you want one, please get one. If you want a year ahead reading and your birthday is not until December, you can book it now. We can look in advance. If you just haven't tried any of my readings or you just want to come talk to me, book the cheapest one and just come talk to me. Who cares? But you will be helping to support me financially still by booking. And once I do have money and I feel I have the time and the energy to open my books up again, they will remain at the reduced price so that more of you hopefully can come see me. I'll probably have to set some other boundaries for myself so that I'm not overworking myself, but you know. So that's my biggest update. Winter got a big boy job and will not be doing readings, but will still be doing this channel. We'll be doing these lives probably on either Sunday mid mornings or Saturday later evenings. I don't know for sure which one just yet, but I am open if you want to reply in the comments if you're watching this later and you want to let me know which one you would prefer. I am curious just what y'all would be more open to. It'll really just depend on how I feel once I get into my flow, which day works better for me so that I can offer the things that I want to offer you. So that's my biggest update. I'm very excited. I had 2 interviews, one for a basically promotion within my department, and another one was an interview for a completely different department that I knew nothing about. And when I had the interview for the other department first, and I was very surprised during the interview how nice it felt to speak to them. Like the energy was very light. It was very like lighthearted. I cracked a lot of jokes. I rizzed them up. I was still wearing a mask and everybody was chill. So it was good vibes in that interview. And I really didn't know how I did as far as answering the questions because like I said, I didn't know much about the position and I didn't know really what I was getting myself into, but it just felt cohesive. It felt like this is kind of nice. So I left kind of being like, I feel like they liked me. They laughed at my jokes, they were cool. But we'll see. And then as it turns out, I was their number 1 pick and I blew them away, apparently. So that interview went fantastic. Who knew? And then I also had the interview within my department. I felt very competent in that interview, although it felt more serious. It felt more stoic, a little bit less jokey. So as much as I originally wanted the promotion within my own position, my own department, I'm going to be transferring to a different department. And then this department actually opens me up to a lot of other opportunities with the school that I work at, the college that I work at. So I have no idea where this is going to take me, but based on my own chart, this was a prediction I had for myself for this year, was that I was going to move up in the school that I work at. Because it just, sometimes when you're an astrologer, So it's happening, and I'm very curious where it's going to take me. But yeah, it feels like a good opportunity, and I will obviously keep you all posted as I go. So thank you so much for supporting me. If you've ever booked a reading from me before now, thank you for supporting me up to this point. If you've ever donated to me like via Cash App or Venmo or whatever, if you've supported me in any way, thank you so much, and I'm very much looking forward to hopefully being able to support you or return that favor in some kind of a way, because I have not had a big boy job ever. So I'm excited. This is good news. So let me see what you're saying in the chat. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. We do love stability. We need stability. I need this so bad. Y'all don't understand. I'm just hoping that whatever these Pisces eclipses are about to do don't fuck it up in the 2020 way. That's my only concern, but I don't know. We'll see. Yes, please book for your birthday. Book just to get some insight on your chart. Have me read your sidereal chart. Whatever you want. All readings 50% off. Now through March 24th. I think it's really through that Friday, because then I start on the 24th, but that'll be spring break for me the week of the 16th. So I'll be off completely and have plenty of time that week to do readings. So come talk to me. Hi, Kratos. Hi, Desiree. Hi, Lo. All right. Lightness feels so much better right now. It really does. I was like, okay, this feels like a nice department. It's the welcome center at the college that I work at. So I'm working with all new students, incoming students, helping people learning about, it's very Gemini. It's very Gemini, very social, very much needing to be knowledgeable about every department. It's something I think I'm going to be really good at. So I'm excited for a new challenge. I'm excited to learn about something, and I'm kind of looking forward to like not putting so much pressure on myself to do my own work. I think having a little bit more freedom to just like sit and think, even on the job, because it's not always going to be busy 24/7, of course. But yeah, stuff like that I think is just going to be good. So anyway, that's my biggest update. I hope to see you in my virtual office before then, and then we will reconvene at a later time. So now that that's out of the way, our topic for today, we have a lot today. I don't have a history lesson for you today because I was interrupted by the spirit of I need to talk about what's happening in the sky right now, because a lot of things are shifting, and they've even caught me off guard. I have no idea what I'm going to say. I have a big page of notes, but it's all like, they're all just, it's not a coherent, cohesive thought. So I'm just going to try to channel and move with what feels right to say, and go from there. So first off, transits for the week. I did put them in the description. They are yesterday, one that I forgot. Well, two that I forgot. Mercury trine Mars yesterday. Mercury and Gemini trine, Mercury and Aquarius trine Mars retrograde yesterday. But then Mars stationed direct last night around 8 o'clock Central. And I totally forgot. February 23rd, Mars stationed direct. Totally forgot that was happening and didn't talk about it last week. But I'm sure many of you felt it. So I'll be talking about that today. There's also Mercury conjunct Saturn, happens on Tuesday the 25th. Mercury in Aquarius conjunct Saturn in Aquarius. And that's kind of a clue or a cue that once Mercury moves in front of the sun in real time, that it's going to station retrograde at some point soon. So Mercury then enters Pisces on Thursday the 27th. And since there's going to be a Mercury retrograde in Pisces, another Mercury retrograde season is upon us, and another retrograde season, our double retrograde season, is really kicking off coming this Thursday. Also on Thursday, a couple of hours after Mercury enters Pisces, we will have the new moon in Aquarius that will go exact at 15 degrees with the sun and Saturn as well. And then on Saturday, March 1st, Venus will station retrograde in Pisces already. I feel like that snuck up on me. Totally. I was looking at the transits for the week to put in the description when I was scheduling the video, and I was like, I thought we had a little bit more time before that happened, but we're already here. So yeah, Venus will station retrograde in Pisces this Saturday, which means Venus is already slow. She's probably already posted up in the sky at 15, 16 degrees right now. So there's that. And then in case I forget to mention it, next week, come Sunday, March 2nd, there will also be Sun squared Jupiter. So the Sun in Aquarius squared Jupiter in Taurus. So busy week. Those are a lot of really big big shifts happening, right? Another thing I want to do briefly is just go through Mars retrograde dates, Venus retrograde dates, and just to kind of refresh your memory of those while more people are still pulling up. Our Mars retrograde dates. Mars originally entered Gemini last year, August 26th, 2024. And then it entered Cancer October 20th, 2024. It's stationed retrograde at 11 degrees Cancer on December 6th, 2024. It retrograded back into Gemini on January 20th, 2025. And then it's stationed direct today at 22 degrees Gemini. Today is February 23rd. It will re-enter Cancer on April 2nd. And then it will exit Cancer and officially leave all of its retrograde shadows by June 6th, where Mars will enter Leo, and we will be in a completely different astral landscape by then. So let's start with talking about this Mars direct station in Gemini. What I want to say about this transit and just this entire retrograde between Cancer and Gemini is the relationship between anxiety and the fear created by the intellectual mind's ability to kind of see into the future, more or less, and the relationship between control and trying to control outcomes and control your emotions. That's like the overarching theme of this live, because it also brings in topics around these mutable transits between Gemini and Pisces and this upcoming very long Pisces transit with Saturn and Pisces. And it also talks about cardinal placements, Mars moving through Cancer, but then also Jupiter will enter Cancer and station retrograde there later this year. So this retrograde, I think, has been a lot of us reckoning with our ability to use language and narratives in order to control our emotions and to control other people's behaviors or our own behaviors, or to just like, I don't know. So this morning I posted on my Instagram stories a clip that I saw of this woman getting interviewed on Diary of a CEO, which is a podcast I don't listen to. I have a strong bias against it because the guy's a millionaire, billionaire, I don't know. Interviewing other people, and the lady that he's interviewing, she is a kind of a self-help coach type, but she did do, I think, a doctorate in sociology or something like that. So she does have, education, formal education in sociology and other things, but she's also like Oprah's self-help coach or something like that. So I was already biased, but I was listening to what she was talking about in this clip, and it was about how language is like the number one reason in this content warning, by the way, suicide. It may come up throughout the conversation today, but I'm not getting too deep into it, just kind of using it as an example for this larger thing I want to talk about with identity. But she was talking about how language is one of the main reasons why people end up committing suicide. And I was like, what? Like, that's so interesting. But she goes on to say something about like lying and telling the truth, and the way that we use language as a way to speak about reality, basically, and the ways that you can alter your perception of reality by the way that you speak about it, and thus the stories you tell about yourself, and thus your relationship to the world around you and things like that, right? So this is what I mean when I say, like, I have a lot of thoughts and I'm not sure how they all go together, but it has to do with anxiety, fear, and control. And so I think with Mars in Gemini, right, like when we're speaking to each other, speaking about something, the words that we use, the language that we use, it's going to set off like associations for us about what things mean, or, associations about what's actually happening. And then we then create images in our minds that like are an approximation or representation of that language. And then when we create those images in our minds, or those ideas in our minds, it allows us to project into the future like certain outcomes. But then it also creates a physical response, like an emotional response, whether we're conscious of it or not. So this is where that whole like mind-body connection relationship thing comes in. And I don't think a lot of us realize how often, and I've talked about this a lot, so this is not new, right? And people talk about this a lot, but um I don't think we realize how much the information that we consume and the information that we share is shaping our perception of the world around us and whether we feel safe or not, right? If we're using really intense language to describe things, like that's having a physiological response on us. If other people are using intense language to talk about things, that's having a physiological response on us. So there's a connection between um, how we feel and the words that we use, is what I'm getting at. And so throughout this Mars retrograde, if it started all the way back in August of last year, that was when the election was really heating up and a lot of rhetoric was really heating up. That was before we fully entered this overtly fascist stage. We were already in like a covert version of it, especially with the genocide in Palestine and things like that. But we were already in this kind of dystopian era, and then talking about it and expressing the threat that everyone is feeling, whether that's feeling threatened by the state or threatening other people. If you're if you're on the other side of the political spectrum, everybody is experiencing some kind of feeling of threat and blaming it on different things. So some people are blaming other identity groups. Some people are blaming the systems. Some people are blaming, whatever it is, but everyone is feeling some experience of threat and trying to talk about it. And so now that we've switched administrations during that time and our material circumstances have changed as well, now Mars has stationed retrograde in Cancer and moved back into Gemini, where we've had the experience of our material circumstances change, and therefore our emotional circumstances change to kind of match up with the reality that we've been speaking about, that we've been anticipating all at the end of last year, and having the physical experience of it, and now getting to the point where we're speaking about it again in language, in theoretical and I don't know, speaking about it verbally, theoretically, and otherwise. So I say all of that to say, like, some of the uncertainty and therefore fear and anxiety that a lot of people are experiencing is because they're trying to figure out, like, just how much of the threat that everyone is speaking about is real and how much of it is imagined and how much of it is something. And when I say imagined, I mean it's not happening yet, but may happen in the future. And trying to figure out what to do about it. And it's hard to figure out how to tackle a situation when everybody has a different opinion or different perspective on what the threat is, right? So we've seen this a lot. If you're on Twitter, obviously, or any other social media site where people are expressing their politics, the last couple of weeks on Twitter, it's been a lot of like arguments about theory. Like people are arguing about Marx versus like some people are arguing about Marx, and some people are arguing about like, well, you don't need to read Marx if you are a person of color and you've had these experiences if you're a Black person, things like that, arguing about theory. There are other people who feel like arguing about theory is a waste of time because we need to be doing something to actually like deal with our circumstances and all of these different things. There's just all of this chatter. And I felt like I could feel last week it getting to a point where the chatter, the conversation was starting to become incoherent to me. I was like, I don't know what anybody's talking about anymore. And I have a suspicion as well that a lot of people are just kind of regurgitating talking points that they've heard, or they are projecting, or that they are making assumptions about different theories or different bodies of work, or just making assumptions about what everybody else is saying based on their own preconceived notions and biases and opinions that they have, without actually investigating the theories or the work in full, right? So and this is just my analysis of it all, right? It's in the same way that I said, I watched that clip this morning from Diary of a CEO, and I already was dismissing it in my mind because of the opinions I had about him interviewing this white woman who works for Oprah, and like himself being a billionaire with an English accent, like all this other stuff, a millionaire, billionaire, whatever, CEO with this accent. And just some of the things she was talking about, like I was already in my mind doing this thing where I'm like, well, there's a lot of reasons that I have to dismiss what she's saying and not fully like actually be curious and open my mind up to whatever value is in what she's saying. And then, yeah, I was thinking like everyone is kind of doing that right now because everyone feels unsafe about what the truth is and is kind of weary of letting new information in that could potentially inform then how they relate to their circumstances. A lot of people doing this with Marx as well right now, saying like, you know, the only reason people keep bringing up Marx is because he's a white man and he's not saying anything that other people haven't said. He doesn't own theory, this and that. And I'm like, well, yes, that's true. And also, like, I haven't read it personally. I've started reading it. It's very dense. It's very difficult language to understand and keep up with. And like, if you're really gonna read and listen to it, or read and annotate, or like read and listen through an audiobook or whatever you're gonna do, like it's one of those things that you hear what he says and you have to stop and you have to like think, okay, what the fuck did he just say? Why is this so difficult to understand? And a lot of people get frustrated with that, rightfully so. And still, one of the things that I believe is that, and this is very Gemini of me, right? Sometimes the messenger is not the point. Sometimes the messenger is just the messenger. It's just the person in front of you giving you this information that you can then apply to whatever situations you need to apply to it. And um and sometimes it's just got to be that. So you can get the information that you need and then again move forward with that. So that's kind of where I stand on a lot of these things and why a lot of the sources that I reference, it's not that I sought out that particular source, it's that I probably came across the source on accident and it resonated with me, or like I just get this sense of like, oh, that sounds a lot like what this transit is probably about. It's all very intuitive for me. I didn't know whenever I opened up Instagram this morning that I was going to hear this lady talk and be like, that's Mars retrograde. What is she talking about? And then click into it. But then I listened to the whole podcast episode, which I am going to recommend you listen to because it surprised me multiple times throughout what she was saying once I got over myself basically. But her name is Dr. Martha Beck. um she's Oprah's life coach, and it says this weird trick reduces anxiety and fixed my childhood trauma or something like that. And it's a Diary of the CEO episode from like 2 months ago. So if you want to listen to it, I recommend it. It's like 2 hours and 15 minutes, but it's just really interesting. And when you listen to it, you don't have to listen to it as her as an authority, but listen to it with these themes in mind of like fixed signs, immutable signs, and Gemini and Pisces, and truth and meaning making and anxiety and all of this other stuff, because it was very spot on. So anyway, all of that to say that that all just got me thinking about the ways that it just got me thinking about this thing that she was talking about a lot, where the power of language, like we really do underestimate the power of language and its ability to create realities, right? Which is very Aquarius. We talk about this a lot. So on the heels of, these retrogrades, this new moon that we're in right now, I feel like this conversation comes up a lot about the power of language and the effect that it has on the mind and therefore the body and therefore our relationship with the world around us. But I think the suicide aspect that she was talking about, which I don't fully understand what she was talking about it, but it reminded me of our very first full moon party that we had a couple of years ago. That was me and Dana and Elias and Madison. We had this big full moon party on the full moon in Leo. And I remember somebody talking about the conversation of suicide. And I remember someone saying that the feeling of like wanting to unalive yourself was related to a version of yourself that was not authentic to you. And therefore it felt like something that was constraining you or like constricting you or restricting you from just living your life, right? And so in some cases, like the ways that suicide is a way of us trying to regain control over our lives whenever everything else outside of us feels out of control, that always kind of stuck with me. And then coincidentally, I've transitioned since then. So to kind of shift the conversation, right? Because I really want to talk about identity at the heart of all of this, I think because of the new moon this week, and how when you're not living in integrity, I'll say, because that was something she mentioned a lot in this video, which I think is very Pisces, actually. I just started watching Severance as well yesterday, but I only got a couple episodes in and I was distracted. But it was making me think about anyway, this idea of like integrity she brought up, and she was saying integrity is just like integrating your whole self. I don't remember if I wrote it down, but I think it was to be whole or to be integrated was this idea of integrity, being one with yourself basically, and like living in that truth. And that felt very Pisces to me, actually, even though you could probably associate it with something else, because there's something very like intuitive about living in your own truth. And so when I was thinking about like intuition and truth and then being yourself, of course I was thinking about Jupiter being in Taurus, and how like I've been trying to sort out like what Jupiter and Taurus and Venus and Pisces are doing with each other because of their relationship with each other. And I was like, what does it mean to need approval in order to be authentic, or like need approval in order to live into your truth, right? Or to like listen to your intuition or something like that. And I don't fully have the answer to this, so I'm going to talk through it. But one, it was making me think about all of these ideological arguments that we have online, right? Which I'm fine with, because I feel like online is the space for ideological arguments. It's literally the arena of language. Like that's the only tool that we have to use. So of course people are arguing about ideology. It makes sense to me. And at the same time, I think one of the reasons why people have gotten to a point where they can't let it go is because we want other people to approve of our ideas, of our ideology, of our beliefs. Because whenever we are in agreement about what is real, then it's easier for us to be in relationship with each other, and it's easier for us to trust ourselves. It's hard to trust yourself when you're the only person who thinks like you and sees things the way that you do and believes the things that you do, because automatically you're going to gaslight yourself and say that, oh, I must be crazy. I must be the one who's wrong. I must just not know what I'm talking about if nobody else agrees with me and nobody else believes what I believe. So as much as we say like, sometimes you gotta just believe what you believe and fuck everybody else and fuck the haters, all this stuff, it's like shared belief systems are vital and essential for trust within relationship to other people. You at the very least have to have a mutual understanding. If you don't agree on what it is that you're talking about, it's at least beneficial to know where the other person is coming from and why they believe what they believe, and to not dismiss where they're coming from. And so I think when people are arguing about theory or people are arguing about ideology or whatever it is, it's because an aspect of themselves feels threatened. And I don't think that we necessarily need to get into like which theories are right and wrong, and like which ideologies are right and wrong, and what works and what doesn't. But I think something that cuts through a lot of that tension and a lot of that feeling of threat is curiosity. And I know I've said this a million times, but the way they were talking about curiosity in this interview, as well as the way that it was talked about in my course, was really like the air gift of being able to separate yourself from the thing that you're talking about and to view it as an object. So, for example, something that I think about a lot with Pisces transits and Gemini transits together is this question of like, okay, what are you not saying right now? Right? What are you not saying as far as the person who is expressing yourself? What are you not saying that would allow the other person to really understand and get where you're coming from? And then sitting with how vulnerable it feels to actually say the thing that is true to you, knowing the other person may not understand, agree, or even respond to it in a way that feels good to you. But there's just this question of like, okay, what are you not saying? And then also the other side of it being, what are you anticipating or assuming is going on? And like, are those things true? Or like, are those things real? Where do they fit in this conversation? So when I'm thinking about like being in an argument with a Trump supporter, right? We'll just go there. Already being in that dynamic is going to be really emotionally elevating and taxing for me, because their ideology is a threat to my literal existence, right? And if we're going to get anywhere in that conversation, there's a part of me that is going to have to, one, manage my own discomfort by like acknowledging it and sitting with it and being patient with it, but also not defending it so much, because it's not about the part of me that feels defensive when I'm trying to be curious about someone else. If I'm being curious about someone else, there's no need for me to defend myself because it's not about me. So I'm like, put that over here, because that doesn't need, if my goal is to understand why somebody else thinks the way that they think, I have to put myself over here for a moment and make it about them. And that separation kind of allows you to not, well, one, that separation kind of allows you to take it less personally, but to also actually be interested and curious and almost like a little bit more open to what the other person is saying so that you can hear and digest what they're really saying. Because it's not about you. So it feels like less of an attack on you and more of just genuine interest in what in the fuck is this person talking about? What can I learn here? So when I talk about curiosity being the antidote to like anxiety and fear, that's one way. Another way that was brought to my attention was like the role that creativity plays in managing your own fear and anxiety. And again, I apologize, this is all over the place, but um creativity as like a physical and tactile practice that doesn't involve thoughts in the sense of language, right? So going back to Jupiter and Taurus and the idea of like pleasure and things that feel nice and things that are like tactile sensual experiences, um something as simple as going for a walk and looking at the trees. For me, like mountain biking, I noticed a big shift when I started mountain biking, and I used to mountain bike with headphones on because I'm in my mind, I'm thinking, it's cardio. I don't want to be thinking about the fact that I'm doing cardio and I'm tired and this is hard. I just want to jam out to the music. The music will like pump me up and get me going, whatever. So I did that for probably the first year and a half of mountain biking. And then one day, I don't remember why, but I was just like, okay, maybe my earphones died or something. I was like, what if I just didn't listen to music and I actually, oh, it was because I would watch so many YouTube videos of people mountain biking, and I realized how much I loved the sound, like the ASMR of mountain biking on a trail and like the sound of the tires on the gravel and just like that whole experience. So I was like, oh, and a lot of people were talking about how listening to your bike and the way that it's interacting with the terrain gives you a lot of like sensory input on how to bike. And so when I stopped listening to music and stuff while I was biking, my riding got so much better because I was actually one with my bike and the earth and like the sounds around me, instead of being in my head in the lyrics and the music and all this other stuff and just kind of like pushing my body past its limits. I got to ride more intuitively and more in this like flow state that felt good. It feels euphoric, and I haven't listened to anything biking since then. That was like 3 or 4 years ago. And it was amazing how, when I talk about intuitive, it's like intuitive in the sense of being able to access way more information through listening and through having repeated experiences and through feeling this physical sensation of what it means to ride a bike and deal with all this sensory input that didn't leave much space for me to think thoughts. Right, because thinking thoughts, then I'm disconnected from myself. So there's also that part of it. And so when talking about creativity, like if you're catching yourself in an anxious spiral and feeling like, a lot of fear and anxiety and dread about the future, or even if we're talking about something as intense as like suicide, there's a feeling of like hopelessness or a feeling of a lack of control over the outcome that leads to this feeling of, okay, I either need to just like, I'm freaking out in my body because I don't know what to do about this imagined threat that I'm anticipating. Or again, going back to this like being disconnected from your authentic sense of self, that's like, I don't want to exist out of integrity with myself. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel progressive. It doesn't feel like there's anywhere for me to go. I'm not in alignment with myself. Um creativity like puts you in this mode where again you're not in your thoughts. You're not in imagined reality, you're in material reality when you have to create. And create can mean anything, like I said, like going for a walk. It can be a physical movement that you're doing. It can be anything that takes you out of your thoughts specifically and into, unless you're journaling. My therapist actually called me out because I was like, yeah, I don't journal because I feel like if I have to sit and write and then my mind goes faster than my hand, whatever. And she goes, well, then you really need to journal. And I was like, ah. And she's like, because the world that we live in, it was so duh, right? But she was like, the world that we live in, like it's good for you to slow down and to integrate basically your thoughts and the speed of your thoughts in your mind with your hand. You need to slow down. That will allow you to process and move through things a lot faster, even if you don't get everything out of your head. Just the process of physically writing and slowing down is the medicine, is the creative aspect. Because there's just so many different ways that I think we're divorced from our creative energy, that creative energy is an extension of the self, right? Like of your authentic self that somebody else isn't controlling in you. So I don't know. I'm not even getting to all of the things that I wrote down in my on my notes, but there's a TikToker that slapped me with the word the other day. Her name is T-Day Blogs. She's your TikTok creative director, black creator on TikTok. She's hilarious. But she was saying, create more than you consume. That like whenever you catch yourself spiraling about something, that's your sign that you need to go create. You need to go put something out into the world. And that just allows you to tap into yourself, a different version of yourself that you don't get to usually access. And I think through doing that, like the more that you create, the more of yourself that you get to learn and tap into, but then the more like yourself you are out in the world. And that ends up being countercultural. It's kind of what she was talking about in this podcast. It's this idea of like, again, back to this question of what are you not saying, whether you're not saying it to yourself or someone else, your truth about something. Like when you get to tap into that, it allows you to push back, or at least to exit, I'll say, maybe to exit some of the cultural constraints around authenticity, right? Like, I know for me, with being trans, it was like, I think I thought that I had to be suffering in a particular way in order to be trans, when the reality is that, like, I wouldn't say I was actually suffering. I mean, I was in some ways, right? But I wasn't suffering in the way that, like, the media would tell you trans people suffer. It was just kind of this like series of compulsive behaviors that I knew I was doing, but I couldn't stop doing, and I didn't know why. Especially whenever it came to like relationships with other people. And so once I finally just like gave myself permission one day to actually run away with a thought or a feeling that I was having about myself, and then kind of opening my eyes and looking around and realizing all of the ways that just by myself I was already doing all of these things that I thought I wasn't doing, then I was like, wait, this is who I am. And then that integration happened, and then when I actually like said it out loud to someone else, primarily my parents, my mom in particular, I think I've shared that story before, but once I finally told her like I'm trans, and I just like burst into tears. And I remember this feeling like of this crying feeling of her was like purging all of those compulsive behaviors that I've been doing all of this time, that were basically like me being separated from myself and me feeling out of touch with my own reality and experience, and like all of these stories that I told myself about what was real and what was true and this and that just all like melted away, and like literally has been gone ever since. And then since physically, transitioning, starting T and stuff like that, there's been this like calm confidence that I've had, that's not that I don't have to like walk around kind of boasting, I don't know, this person who I am or who I want to be or whatever. I'm just being a lot more. My anxiety is pretty much like dissolved since then. It's just a lot of, I don't know, a lot more honesty, I guess, around existing. And now that we're at this point with dealing with this administration, and so many people have asked me like, how are you feeling? Are you okay? Are you scared? Are you this? Are you that? And I'm like, I'm fine, honestly. It was daunting to get the election results at the time and know what was coming. But because I was already existing in reality, basically, and kind of knowing what everything was, like, I feel like for me, and this going back to the whole fear and anxiety and control thing, I think for me, it's more alienating to me when I'm the only person worried about something. And that makes me feel anxious because I feel like defenseless. I feel like nobody believes me. I feel like I'm alone. But when everybody is freaking out about something, then I'm just kind of like, okay, so I'm not crazy. And that feels calm to me. So back to this whole thing of like truth and approval from other people, right? If we're all perceiving the same threats, if we're all at least perceiving a threat and feeling like there's something going on, even if we're not in agreement about what it is, that already is like soothing. I don't know if soothing is the word. That's a weird way to put it, but it's just kind of like I feel more at ease now than I did leading up to the election and not knowing what was going to happen, because now we're all on the same page that fuck shit is happening, and I'm not alone in my concern about that. So God, I feel like that went all the way around to get back here. But anyway, I say all of this to say, like, I'm going through my notes and making sure I hit all of my points. Yeah, language causes anxiety through the stories that we tell about reality in the future. And when we're detached from reality, we're detached from our bodies, because our bodies only live in present reality, and our verbal minds are the ones that lie to us, which I was like, body doesn't lie, but your mind can and does lie to you. Da, 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 da. I don't know. There's a lot more I could say about that. I just think y'all should go watch the podcast because I thought the podcast was good. What I do want to do is say that I pulled cards while I was taking notes because I was like, what is this? And the cards directly spoke to what I was talking about. So I already pulled cards. These cards are for Mars direct. They're for Venus retrograde coming up, and for Mercury retrograde coming up, and probably for this eclipse too, but for sure those 3 transits and how they're all connected with this idea of like telling the truth about who you are. What am I trying to say? Maybe I don't have a way to wrap it up in a bow just yet, but all of these things are connected. I want to put all of these things in your minds as well so that you can figure out how they relate to you. But before I forget, Venus retrograde dates. Venus started its shadow period on January 27th. It's stationed retrograde today. Some of these dates are wrong. Oh, no, it's not. It doesn't station retrograde today. Ignore me. That's Mars. March 1st, Venus stations retrograde 16 degrees Pisces. It'll station direct on April 12th, 0 degrees Pisces. It will cross 16 degrees Pisces after it stations direct again on May 15th, and then it will enter Aries on May 31st. So those are your Venus retrograde dates. So let me tell you what cards I got. So, and all of my tarot girlies in the chat, y'all are gonna know exactly what's going on. So my card on the bottom was the Queen of Wands. Surprise! So that already signaled to me that this idea of like creativity is really important. Creativity in these other ways that we're describing it. So not just like sitting and drawing, but especially sitting and drawing, or sitting and creating something that feels good to you, that feels true to you and authentic to you. One of the quotes from my tarot book says, for the Queen of Wands, the fire burning inside the Queen of Wands is something that she has learned to tame, nurture, and make work for her in the best of ways. And I thought that was talking about discomfort, the shadow, and the ways that we try to control these parts inside of us as a way to like not let them out. And one of the things that T-Day blogs on TikTok was saying was like, express, confront, and feel. Like that's the whole purpose of creation, is to express what's going on inside of you, your despair, your discomfort, your fears, your anxieties, whatever, your troubles, but also your joys and your celebrations and all of those things. But to express it, get it out. And once you get it out, you can confront it in an objective, material way. And that allows you to sort through your feelings around it, which honestly, that quote right there sums up the rest of my cards, because other than the Queen of Wands as the context, my first card pulled was the Empress. And what I loved about getting the Empress in the first position that's kind of describing the situation that we're all in was this idea of like connection to nature, connection to our bodies, connection to our needs, back to Mars eventually going back into Cancer, and then more Cancer transits in the coming days and years. Um, Connection to the nature and body, and this like unreserved approach to life and living passionately. So this unreserved approach to life, as in like unreserved approach to being yourself in this reality, despite all of the cultural things that tell you not to do that, right? And all of the cultural influences that might say, no, you need to be like this, but all of us basically rebelling and saying, but this is who I am. This is who me engaging with my humanity in a real way, especially through creation and creativity. I think Empress and Queen of Wands in this spread is like chef's kiss. The card in the middle to describe kind of the conflict, whether that's the internal conflict or external conflict, was King of Wands. And I love this card because it's very on the nose. The little small boat in the middle of the sea, of these choppy waters, and just feeling the sense of contentment was like having emotional strength in the face of difficulty, and still finding ways to support other people, and still finding balance with your emotions and your own truth, your own integrity, while also having empathy for what other people are experiencing, even if you're in disagreement, like we talked about earlier. And listening to your unconscious without being overwhelmed by it, while having compassion for your emotional responses and other people's emotional responses, and really like having respect for the fear and anxiety that you're feeling, instead of trying to shove it down, like finding a place for it to go, especially through creativity, especially if you think about Queen of Wands being the card above this one in the 3-card spread that I'm using. Like all of those feelings and other people's feelings, like they do have a place. They're not meant to be just dismissed or shoved down or cast out or shamed. They need to be felt in order for us to go where we're going as a society. And what I thought was the most interesting to tie all of this together, the card in the position of solution, was the 8 of Swords. Like, I literally started this whole conversation talking about how much fear and anxiety lives in the mind. And that's not to say that it isn't real, but it is in the mind, because the mind is, whenever we're not leveraging our creativity to actually like create in a way that feels authentic and passionate and like inspirational and integrated for us, our minds will instead create realities that we feel like we can't escape and can't get out of. That's a fucking bar. It will instead make us feel like we are trapped in our circumstances, like there's nowhere else that we can go, and there's nothing else that we can do. This is my fate, and therefore I have to myself, because there's no hope, there's no possibility. I don't have any control over what's going on around me. But the reality is that, and the quote that I wrote down was that much can be done with limited sight. And I feel like that's a huge word of advice for where we're moving forward, because so much of these Pisces transits is not having access to information, not being able to see, not knowing a concrete singular truth that is going to get everyone on the same page and therefore make everyone behave in the same way. That doesn't mean that we're doomed, we're hopeless, there's nothing that can be done. It just means we're going to have to rely on something else. In this case, something about creativity is really the gift. Because, if you're in this situation, right, looking at the card literally, if you're in this situation, your eyes are closed or your eyes are blindfolded, you are tied up, you're surrounded by these knives, you're going to feel like there's no way out. You have to get creative. You have to get creative. Otherwise, you're just going to sit there. But I think what's scary about it, the other thing I wrote down, is that part of the issue with the 8 of Swords is that in order to take action, you have to accept the fact that you do have power in the situation, that you do have control in the situation. And that means you probably could have gotten yourself out of the situation a lot sooner. But for whatever reason, the reality that you've conjured up in your mind says that it's not possible. So you're like holding yourself back. You're limiting yourself from taking the steps necessary to liberate yourself. Right. And so I don't know. I think creation creation allows you to become an active participant of your own life. I think that's the gist. I wrote that down at the top of this. I don't remember where I heard it at the top of my notes. I don't know where I heard it, but I think that's really scary. I think it requires a lot of self-trust. I think it can be alienating at times to be yourself whenever everybody else is kind of performing a version of themselves that isn't authentic to them. I think it can be scary to not know what's coming next, whether that's for you as an individual or for us as a collective. And that feeling of the unknown is the thing that makes it hard to trust and to move forward, whether that's trusting yourself, trusting your other people, trusting the universe, trusting God, trusting whoever it is. Um, but whenever you can lean into the part of you that is creative, that is introspective, that is imaginative, and I would even throw in optimistic, that knows that everything that is happening is not necessarily for a reason, but that there's something to be learned from everything that is happening and everything that has happened. And regardless of where the message is coming from, making use of it, and transmuting it into something that you can use to liberate yourself. I don't know what that means specifically for, dealing with material circumstances like the economy and the Trump administration and MAGA Republicans and all that kind of stuff, like, or blue MAGA liberals and like Democrats and people who are really hell bent on things going back to normal, right? Like, I don't know exactly what that looks like, but I do think in order to find the solution, we have to be creative. We have to be willing to reclaim our imagination. I know we've said this a million times, but reclaim our imagination in a way that is authentic to us and allows for us to take up space in the world in a way that if nothing else, at the end of the day, we are being true and honest with ourselves, regardless of the possible risks or outcomes that could come with that. I feel like it feels scary to do that when you haven't done it yet, in the same way that for me, and I don't speak for everybody, of course, but I know in the same way for me, um, the decision to go on tea specifically for me, but even then, like I said, just saying the words out loud that I'm a trans man and like letting that be true for me liberated me from so much, freed me so much of my own inner turmoil that was holding me back from whatever. Because think about it. I came out to my parents in November 2022. And that was like one of the lowest points of my life before I came out in a lot of ways, where I was really unwell, physically unwell. And since then, now look, even when the world is the mess that it is, I feel way more confident in myself and what I'm capable of and what I can do because I'm living in my truth. I'm not trying to be something that I'm not or someone that I'm not, to the point that I'm now about to work a 9 to 5 when I never thought I would do that. I don't know how it's going to go. I don't know how it's going to turn out, but I'm trusting the process that, following my gut, following my intuition, and just kind of going where spirit is leading me, where my gut is leading me, my intuition is leading me, as long as I'm being true to myself and I feel good about it, is going to take me where I need to go, and will have ripple effects on all of my relationships as well. Because I think that piece of it, like the way that us being ourselves allows other people to be themselves, or at least allows other people to come in contact with their authentic self, even if they're not fully embodying it in the moment. Like, you become the example of what's possible whenever you be yourself. And a lot of people are going to feel uncomfortable about that because they're stuck in their 8 of Swords and they feel like it's not possible for them. And they will project that onto you and say that it's not possible for you. Bad things are happening to you. They'll send you the evil eye and all the projections and try to dim your light, all that shit. Fine. That ain't got nothing to do with you. It just doesn't. Even that process is still making them have to confront themselves in some kind of a way. And that's good for them. It sucks that you are on the receiving end of it, but get your protections up, do what you got to do, keep being yourself and letting your light shine, right? But yeah, a lot of that starts with getting really clear on the narratives that you tell yourself and that you live by about what you think is possible. And a lot of that starts with um, telling the truth. Again, what are you not saying that needs to be said? I said I was going to pull it all together at the end, and then look at me at an hour. I did. So that's fucking dope. I hope that this made sense. I hope that it lands for you in some kind of a way that you can take whatever messages you got from this conversation today or from these podcasts and conversations and whatever else that I recommend. I hope at the end of the day that it doesn't make you more dogmatic. The point is not dogma. The point is not this person has the keys to the universe. But the point is just to get you thinking differently. Because that's what it does for me. So and I my hope is also that, you know, if you don't want to hear them say it, then you heard me say it, and maybe that counts for something, right? Okay, I said a lot and I didn't read any of y'all's comments because I had to stay on my channel, but I want to know what y'all said and then I'm gonna hop out. But if you haven't already, please like the video, please subscribe. And yeah, okay, so Sunday evening, girl. Yeah, Sunday mid-morning also might be the vibe. My intention moving forward is to mountain bike on Sundays as long as the weather is nice. Even while I'm working, like that's a commitment I'm trying to keep to myself. So I usually do that earlier in the day. But as the seasons change and it gets unreasonably hot in Texas, you know, I won't be biking as much on Sundays. So, but Sunday mid-morning is a possibility for sure, I think. Sunday evening as well. So probably Sundays more than Saturdays. I think Saturdays I'm going to not want to use my brain. And that's for these chats, probably moving them to Sunday mornings instead of Monday mornings since I'll be at work. I need Mars to get out of Gemini because I honestly can't do this. I'm so jumpy all the time. Yeah, it just feels a little too like I did not realize what my body was going through until like yesterday or the day before because I was going through too much. Was a discussion on Blue Sky regarding Jane Fonda redefining woke. I'm sure that was about like language and the messenger and stuff like that. But yeah, sometimes just the person, again, it's the person with the most visibility who gets the message across to the most people. And sometimes it just be like that. That shouldn't negate the power of the message itself. But I do think people deserve credit for their ideas, obviously. Enough of my Mars return. I'm realizing the power of silence a lot. Every day I'm like, I'm not going to swear at people. Hi, Sadie. If you're still here, thanks for making it, even if it was late. Also, hello, Jim. I saw your chats in here as well. I love that point. The argument about what the threat is, so much infighting, and it's becoming nonsensical and non-productive now. Absolutely. It's a hard-ass lesson, but I've been reminded so often to sometimes just hear the message during this Mars return transit. Yes. Yeah, I started Severance. I haven't finished it, but that was another thing that got me thinking about it. I was like, interesting. Hi, Samaje, if you're still here. I went to a really gorgeous park today, and there were birds, flowers, and a koi pond, and it was really lovely. That sounds fantastic. The tires do be hitting them rocks. Kind of nice. They hit so nice. It's my favorite, especially whenever the rear wheel hub doesn't do the buzzing sound and you can just hear the tires against the trail. It's like, oh, it's so good. That's like one of the few things that actually gives me the ASMR tinglies in my spine. I love it. It's delicious, especially on a little bit of magic mushrooms. Oh my goodness, child. What you're saying about Pisces mirrors my notes for the upcoming Sun conjunct Mercury transit, the missing context and context clues coming into focus, what's not being directly communicated. 1000%. And like what will solve so many of our relational issues is when we really do wonder what experience the other person is having and set our own experience aside just for a moment. Like tend to yourself however you need to get to that place, and then let someone else tell you what they're experiencing without defending yourself. That will solve so many of your problems in relationships, like so many. Oh yeah, Jim, you ate that. This is screaming into my 5th house personally. I never stopped to acknowledge the threat, but glad everyone else is now. Yes. As an Arrow Ace person, this is really hitting the nail on the head. Y'all love it. Y'all are into it. Yes. 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 Period. I wish I started my day with this instead of people denying COVID in a team meeting. I know, right? Period. Hey, Jada. Hey, Emilia. Well, both of y'all got here where now I'm leaving, so y'all are going to have to watch the replay. But, you know, we went on a journey and we made it where we needed to make it. So I do hope that you'll watch the replay if you just tuned in. Let me know what you think. Drop a comment in the replies later. Let me know what you think about these connections between Jupiter and Pisces, because it's really Jupiter and Pisces running the show until like May, whenever Jupiter enters Gemini. And then Jupiter will enter Gemini, and then a lot of these themes just rinse, wash, and repeat, because Jupiter and Gemini through Jupiter and Cancer, it's just going to mirror this Mars retrograde. So I think today's conversation is evergreen, at least for 2025. In the first half of 2026, it's probably evergreen content. I look forward to watching this back later in the year. So if you haven't, again, like the video, please subscribe to my channel, and I will let you all know officially in a couple of weeks when I change the day for these lives. And if you weren't here in the beginning, 50% off of all of my readings until I close my books on March 24th. So if you haven't gotten a reading with me, get in where you fit in. I got to go change so I can go to work. I hope y'all have a wonderful day. Be safe out there. Keep your protections up. Again, tell the truth to yourself, to everybody else, and create in the ways that bring out the most honest, authentic part of yourself, and see where it takes you. I love y'all so much. Thank you for your support. I will talk to you very, very soon. Bye. There we go.